Hey, what's up? It's Justin, and welcome to the Pit Stop. It's good to be back here on NRN, the Noble Racing Network. I did not do a pit stop last week because I felt deathly ill, and I was about to head down to Hotlanta, which turned into Wetlanta because of all the rain, waiting for the NASCAR race to begin, which it finally did, and I had a ton of fun down there, but I was trying to save my energy for that, and I just felt like ass. And this week I'm still sick, but at least I'm feeling better to do one of these. And that's a good thing because there is a lot to talk about. A lot happened this week in motorsports. So we begin overseas in Barcelona, where the weather over there has been pretty weird. But that is where the first Formula One test of the year took place, and historically that's usually where the testing begins, is in Barcelona, Spain, there at Catalunya. But the teams encountered snow, rain, and fog. Oh my! The temperatures in Barcelona, Spain were freezing, with the track temp only being around 2 degrees at one point. That is weird. The weather was unreasonably colder than normal, obviously. In fact, I actually had no idea that it even snowed in Spain, but I guess it does, and it's around this time of the year. But the weather really cut back on the track time for all the teams. To put that into perspective, last year Mercedes posted 558 laps during the test, but this year Toro Rosso had the most laps on the track at 324. Drastic difference in track time from this year and last year. Daniel Ricciardo of Red Bull said that during the test they really only learned about reliability issues that may arise in the car, but with the conditions like they were, you really couldn't gauge performance in the cars. So who's quick early on, who's got the edge, you really can't say at this point because of how the test went. However, defending world champion Lewis Hamilton said that he's ready to go to Australia right now. Said that if they were to go to Australia right now, he was sure they could compete for the win. And a comment like that from Lewis Hamilton should strike fear into your heart if you are a driver on another team. But not sure if the teams are ready right now. So this next test that is coming up is going to be extremely important to find out who's got what. And hopefully that's a dry test from what we had in Catalunya, Spain this week. Now, here in the homeland, IMSA was in a much better setting for testing. They were down in Sebring. Of course, the 12 Hours of Sebring is this month. Pippo Durrani, who won Sebring 2 years ago, will be back to try and do it again, but this time he'll be driving the number 22 Tequila Patron ESM Nissan with Van Overbeek and Nicolas Lapierre. And all three of those guys are former winners at Sebring. And already that team is showing great pace in the testing session, and Durrani believes that he and his team could actually win the race again, adding to his wins at Sebring. And that number 22 car actually had a pretty successful 24 hours of Daytona there for a good while, so that's a pretty strong car. So look to them to be very strong at the 12 Hours of Sebring. But when you think of Sebring, what comes to mind? It should be Corvette. Corvette, who is celebrating its 20th season in motorsports, has won 11 times at Sebring. The first win came in 2002 with Ron Fellows, Johnny O'Connell, and Oliver Gavin behind the wheel. In fact, Oliver Gavin, he still drives the number 4 Corvette, and he'll be in the race this month. Last year, Corvette took the win with Juan Magnussen, Antonio Garcia, and Mike Rockenfeller, which is basically the same team that'll be in that number 3 this year. I'd say Corvette would be a pretty safe pick if that's the one you're looking at for the class win at Sebring, given all the numbers I've just given you. If you look at the numbers, Corvette's a good pick. But sometimes racing isn't all about the numbers. Because do you remember how strong that Chip Ganassi Ford GT was at Daytona? It took the lead and it never surrendered it to the Corvette. For 24 hours, the Corvette chased the Ford GT with no success. And 2 years ago, when Corvette also took the win at Sebring, Ryan Briscoe was part of that team, and now he's in a Ford GT. But for my money, that'll be the best race on the track because it was in Daytona, and I think it will be again at Sebring. But there was some big news in GTD. CJ Wilson Racing has moved into the IMSA WeatherTech Championship with an Acura NSX GT3. Mark Miller, who competed in the 2016 Sebring race, will be behind the wheel of that car, along with a newcomer to the WeatherTech Championship, and I'm probably going to really butcher this name, Till Brockelsheimer. And if you are familiar with the Continental Tire Sport Car Championship from IMSA, Till drove a Porsche GT4 in that series, So CJ Wilson has the work cut out for them because they'll be bringing a brand new car that they have no experience with to one of the toughest endurance races on the calendar. So that'll be a fun storyline to keep up with to see how they do in the 12-hour race. This test session is also important because Continental has brought a new tire out for the year, and none of the teams really know what that tire feels like in a qualifying mode versus having it packed full of fuel for a race run. Many of the GT and prototype teams have already talked about how this was a big change in their car, but the GT3s don't seem to be all that affected as much by the new compound. But I would say Sebring is the best place to test a new tire like this because you know how rough and bumpy the surface of this track is. This should make for a really great race. Again, that race will be on March 17th. That's the 12 Hours of Sebring. Looking forward to it. IMSA right now is some of the most exciting motorsport I think there is to watch. So if you've never watched an IMSA WeatherTech race and you've never watched the 12 Hours of Sebring, March 17th, check it out. It should be a lot of fun. Now in Atlanta, after sitting out in the rain for a few hours, like I said, we finally got the full 500 miles in. It was a great time. But boy, a word I kept hearing all race long was dominant. Dominant, domination, dominant. And it was a dominant performance from the Fords. And not just any Ford, but Kevin Harvick's Ford. Kevin Harvick killed the field down in Atlanta, and he picked up his first win of the season. The first of many, I am sure. But now we look to Vegas. Home of the Busch Boys, in fact. The winner last year was Truex Jr., but I'm going to have to say, man, if I'm looking at everything I saw in Atlanta heading into Vegas, if Ford can keep whatever they have going right now, I think they may run away with this one too. And even though Chevy was able to grab the win at Daytona, they really didn't make a whole lot of noise down in hot Atlanta. In fact, Jimmy Johnson again struggled with yet another miserable race, and Chase Elliott was the only Hendrick team to finish in the top 10. He finished 10th, and the highest finishing Chevy was Kyle Larson, who I believe finished 8th. So right now the Fords are on top with the oldest body style in the league. And Chevy, with their new Camaro, is struggling a little bit on the 1.5 miles. And Vegas is another big track where power and speed are critical. But Toyota, who's just been kind of average right now, Denny Hamlin seems to be carrying the weight of those Toyotas. How's he going to fare at Las Vegas? And this is Kyle Busch's home track. I think Kyle Busch should be one to look out for. If Toyota's going to step up to the plate, it's going to be Joe Gibbs with this week with either Denny Hamlin or Kyle Busch being strong. Now, Ryan Blaney actually got some new sponsorship this week. Body Armor Sports Drink has partnered with Ryan Blaney as a primary sponsor for the July Daytona race. And Body Armor actually started backing Blaney last year, but this year they'll be the primary sponsor on the car. They'll also have a few associate sponsor races on other tracks throughout the year. I got to look at that car today. It's pretty sharp. And this week, the number 43 Richard Petty car, driven by Bubba Wallace, will also have some different colors. They've been picked up by the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas as a sponsor for that car. Have him a little purple car. Wallace finished second in the Daytona 500, but he did not enjoy the same success at Atlanta. In fact, the number 6, driven by Trevor Bayne, exploded going into turn 1 and left up the biggest cloud of smoke I have ever seen in my life with my own eyes. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was slowing to get through that smoke, and Bubba Wallace rammed him in the rear. And that really put a damper on Bubba Wallace's day. But really, the first race of the season, in my opinion, is Atlanta. It's just difficult to see where everybody's at as far as package at a track like Daytona, a super speedway. So when you get to Atlanta, it's really the first race of the year. And with us having this first real look at which teams have a handle on the rule changes early on, those teams to me that are taking to this the best are Stewart Haas Racing and Penske. And Hendrick has got some work to do. That's your pit stop for the week. It's time to place those bets though, because we're going out to Vegas this week. I'll see you after the race for the recap, and stay tuned next week for another pit stop. I'm Justin with NRN, and thanks so much for listening. Take it easy, y'all. Have a great week.